We're ripping in. We're live. Welcome to episode 76 of the Jungle Brothers podcast. I'm Joe Worthington, Paul Philly.
Hello.
And we got Adam Charles joining us today.
Whoop, whoop. What's up, guys?
It's your second time with us, bro.
It is, yeah.
If you haven't heard the other episode with ads, he's my jiu-jitsu coach. So go back and listen to that because it's full of banter. Largely today is also going to be full of banter. We're going to explore the jiu-jitsu realm a little bit, the strength conditioning thing. Relevant to jiu-jitsu and how that plays out. You know, a bit of advice there for combat athletes and people who are kind of looking to do both. But we're kind of just hanging out. We got cakes, we got coffee and cream. The coffee's from Panavore. The cakes are from the Bakehouse. Could you shout out to Clarice?
Thank you so much
for hooking us up. Yeah, fucking mad. You would think that the staff room of a gym like ours would just be like a piece of roasted meat and black coffee. Like no carbs, no fats, no gluten, yeah. But instead it's always fucking cakes and pies and shit.
Hey, on that note, I heard that there's a cafe near here on Botany Road. I think it's called Bix something.
Yeah.
And Alex, who trains with us, who won the blue belt thing.
Yep.
He told me there's a dish on their menu that you designed for them called the Warrior something.
Yeah,
is it true?
Yeah. No, it's the Warrior box.
Warrior box. It's just like meat, and rice, and veggies. Yeah.
It's a shitload of veggies. Yeah, rice and meat. Yep, that's exactly what it is.
It's a choice of protein, though.
It's great.
Yeah, that's what he said. You could choose salmon
steak,
or whatever.
Salmon or chicken.
Yes. Yeah, so
but
Jake and I
recommended by Jungle Brothers.
Oh yeah, it's sick. Jake and I were saying that one bulletproof will have to start a bit early so we can finish early and go there for lunch to have it.
Oh yeah,
one day.
Yeah.
That is a great idea.
Yeah,
it's really
sick.
good.
It's actually really good, and I like what Bix does because he's like they put their own spin on things, and they're from Nepal.
Yes,
Bic and the Sugat, the head kitchen guy. So they've got formalized training here and experience in cafes, but they also have a slightly different take on things because they come from different culture.
Yeah.
So the food that they make, similar to Tony's at Cozy Now, like they come up with this interesting shit, and you're like, that's mad.
Yeah.
We've got to hit that up.
Yeah, nice.
Nothing really to catch you guys. There is two things to catch you up on. I talk about it every week, but the internship's starting on 22nd of October. If you want to know more about the coaching thing or you want to develop yourself in that realm, get in touch with us at Jungle Brothers Movement on Instagram or junglebrothers.com on the webpage. But we are also in the process of booking a Persian yoga workshop. And if you're not sure what Persian yoga is...
I was about to ask, what is Persian yoga?
It's way fucking cooler than it sounds.
You do it on a rug?
It's
way
on a rug. Yeah. No,
you do it on Persian rug.
Yeah.
It's the Persian approach to strength and conditioning that they would use for ancient warriors. And they now use it as the strength and conditioning and warm-up prep for Persian wrestlers or Iranian wrestlers.
Yeah, right.
So it involves certain strength implements that we don't have here in the West, and it's tied to this kind of philosophy. It dates back to pre-Islam in Iran. So I think it's Zoroastrianism, one of their more like the earlier religions, which is not, I don't believe it's widely practiced, well, at least not in Iran anymore. But it's this whole world, and there's a fella that I know, Kashi, who introduced me to it, and he's obviously very passionate, and he wants to come and run a workshop. So I was like, dude, come and run a workshop and take us on this adventure.
Yeah, sick.
So early November, come and learn to be a Persian wrestler.
Wrestler or yoga?
Wrestler.
Oh, wrestler.
It's what they use for wrestling.
Oh, right. I thought you said Persian yoga.
That's what it's called.
Oh, right. Okay.
But I guess I don't know what the definition of the word yoga is in that context.
Oh, okay.
Or even in like the Indian context of
That's very
yoga.
Confusing.
But it's probably like I'm guessing it's maybe something to do with like physical preparation or something like rather than like Chaturanga.
So there'll be some exercises we'll be scrolling with like that. The apparatus. I mean, I saw the meals.
The meals?
Yep. The big type club looking things. I also saw on the dude's Instagram, like the kind of piece of wood that they do push-ups and stuff on.
Push-up board.
Push-up board.
Yep.
So is the workshop going to have a bit of that plus wrestling?
No, it's not going to have any of the wrestling.
Okay.
It's just going to be, I think it's largely going to be centered around using, the meals.
Can you, the what? I don't know what.
They use, have you seen what do they call them? Club bells. Have you ever seen a club bell? It's an exercise implement, and it's kind of like a short baseball bat.
Okay. Oh yeah,
and you do shoulder kind of rotations and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was adapted from this implement, which is called a meal, MEEL.
Right. Okay.
Which is a hardwood object. Same idea, but much wider, and it's got a small handle at the bottom, and they're really big. So a 10 kilo one is like that big.
Wow.
And they're really awkward to deal with. And so they use those, they clean them, and then they have all these exercises that they do to strengthen and stabilize the shoulder and the torso. And that's just one of, I think, the 4 key implements they use. But the other ones are a little bit more abstract. So the meals, I think that they've got a bit of popularity in the West because you can, if you come from an exercise background, you can see them and go, yeah, I can see the benefit of that. Yeah. It has a bit of universal use. Whereas a couple of the other implements, like they have this bow and arrow type stainless steel contraption, which is essentially a big steel bow and a heavy chain, and they use that for overhead preparation. You're probably not going to buy one of those. Yeah. But I would definitely get a fucking couple of meals because I really enjoyed throwing those things around.
Remember the Flintstones?
Cool. I was about to say, it's like
Bam Bams.
Yeah, it's like your inner, rings to your inner Flintstone childhood.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bam. Mate, what's been going on with you, Ads? Tell us who you are, just, for people who might only be meeting you, unfortunately, for the first time.
Catch up. So, obviously it's on the other podcast, but just, briefly. Adam Childs, owner with my wife, Hanada of Alliance Sydney Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a black belt under Fabio Gurgel, who's the head of Alliance. If you're not familiar with the Alliance Jiu-Jitsu team, they're a 25, 26-year-old team, and they have 12 world titles, most successful team in the history of the sport. And we've been open now 2 years in Rose Bay, survived the ongoing pandemic. Yes. Without having to shut down. But yeah, that's pretty much I am in terms of what's going on. When was I last on here? Was it like
early last year?
Last year?
It's probably last year sometime, yeah.
Yeah, so since then, I don't know if a lot has happened. Like the only main thing I had on the cards really, I don't know if we talked about, my son on the last podcast, I can't remember, but obviously just being a dad takes up a lot of time, But the only main thing I had coming up was preparing for the Subversion fight that was supposed to be on May 10th. But then in March, when the lockdown happened, obviously the fight got cancelled. So all that preparation kind of just got put towards improving my couch sitting abilities. And, similar to a lot of people, like, what was happening? Well, not a lot, tried to take a physical business like a gym to an online business to try survive the lockdown, very similar. Well, I actually used a lot of Joey's guidance to help me prepare that, so similar to what you guys did, had to take everything online, right? But then we opened back up again, I think the same time you guys did, or maybe you guys opened a week before, I can't remember.
I think we probably opened up before you a week or two before.
Because we had no contact.
Exactly. Yeah. But our JITS program opened the same day as yours,
so we didn't bother opening until we could have full contact, which was July 1st, I think, from memory. And then it's been good. Since then, it's been, about trying to recover all those students that were, that disappeared or obviously didn't have a gym to come into. So, trying to recapture a lot of those students, and obviously, unfortunately, some never came back, which I'm sure happened to lots of gyms, but majority of our students came back, and ones that we didn't have come back have been replaced by new students that we now have. We have a whole bunch of new guys that even the regular people who train, like, such as Joey, but who's not in as often as normal due to his ACL, will come in and see fresh faces that he's never seen before. So the return has been good. And then more recently, we had a really cool internal competition in the gym last week, which I'm not a fan of internal competitions, but
why not?
I think because if you train appropriately, like if you train hard enough with your training partners, like you don't need to compete against them. And the problem with internal competitions, I think, is it's very easy to, you know, to cross that line and to upset someone. And I'm not saying that you need to like, oh man, you got to protect everyone's feelings in jiu-jitsu. But when you compete, you know, there's a misconception that people think jiu-jitsu is like the gentle art and it's really soft and stuff. And I get that, you know, but just because there's no striking in it doesn't mean that it can't be super aggressive and incredibly uncomfortable, and you can grind your forearm across someone's face and like all this nasty stuff that, you know, you don't really want to do to a training partner. You know, it's still a combat sport. And, you know, let's say we were training boxing or something, and then you have an internal competition with your training partners who you train with on a daily basis and who you don't want to get injured because then you have no one to train with the next day or week. And then we're doing an internal boxing competition and I'm like, I'll just gently try to knock Joey out. Like, that's not how it works, right? So sometimes, you know, I mean, that's an extreme example, but, you know, to some degree, it's the same for jiu-jitsu. Sometimes to get the submission, you know, or to win the fight, you have to be like it's a fight.
Bit of an asshole.
You know,
there's a,
you have to be a bit of a dick.
psychological game going in there, and often you're trying to dominate and alpha that person. And like I know that happens a lot with sparring when you're cornering someone and they're covering up and you're striking. Like you can break someone's will like that.
Exactly, right.
And that is a trait, and that is one of the weapons that you can use against someone.
Yeah. That you may not, you know, that against a teammate doesn't sort of feel great, you know, like breaking the will of a teammate, you know, because, okay, like maybe you might have like a core group of students or something that are all cool with that and sign off on that, but that's like a very small amount of your students, right? Like the average student doesn't have that inside them. The average student, if you break their will, you know, that might be enough for them to, you know, to quit the sport or to, you know,
need this shit.
Yeah, right. Why am I paying for this, right? You know, the average student doesn't compete at that level, you know, or that intensity. So
having said all that, you had one anyway, and there are lots of positives that come out of
for sure. I mean, like we had one because there's no competitions happening in New South Wales, right? So it was like, well, why not? We've also got like a group of more beginner students. So we thought this is a good chance for them to get an idea of how a competition works, you know? So then when they go do a regular competition, it's not 100% brand new. So they could learn the point system and all that. And it was also just an excuse to get everyone together and catch up post-lockdown. But I did premise like the competition with like going back to saying about breaking someone, you know, at the start I said, guys, go more intense than you would in day-to-day training, but not as intense as you would in a competition. You know, these are still your training partners who you want to train with tomorrow or next week. You know, when you sign up for a competition, it doesn't matter that it's a stranger, but it's normally a stranger, and you and that person have both signed a waiver. You've agreed to like step on the mat to compete in a combat sport, and their physical well-being, you know, to put it bluntly, is not your concern, right? Of course, you know, you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to break their arm or something, but, you know, it's their responsibility to defend themselves and tap, right? But when it's a training partner, it's like, you know, let's keep it below competition intensity. And I mean, there was one fight in particular where one of my students had a guy in a really rough position, and I knew that this particular student, if he wanted, could have ripped that submission way further and just tore this guy's his arm or shoulder apart, right? But he didn't, you know, because it's a teammate. And I know this particular student that he could have if he wanted to, you know, if it was a competition. But it's a teammate, you know, and then he lost the fight, which is fine. It doesn't matter, right? It's an internal competition, right? But so it went really well, I think, because we've got such a good group of students who are super responsible, you know, that no one got hurt other than guys complaining about muscle soreness, you know, the next day. Because you do use a different level of intensity, right? When you're competing, and especially when you're on the clock. That's something that we don't realize as well, you know, when When you go, okay, it's a 5-minute round. But when you're rolling in day to day, you roll for 5 minutes, but then you stop to like tie your pants or, you stop.
Ask a question.
Yeah, to ask a question or to move away from the wall. But when it's a competition, in every pause, the time is stopped. Like it's a real 5 minutes of competing. And dudes were gassing hard. But it was good.
There's you mentioned the when he could have pushed the submission further and destroyed the dudes, destroyed the shoulder or the arm. And I was just thinking for folks out there who don't know the art, or maybe they see it. I remember I used to have kind of a misconception that almost like from the Van Damme movies and stuff, whereby you would I don't know if you ever remember like in Hard Target, Van Damme like grabs a guy's arm and like breaks it over his shoulder and like it inverts.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, and I used to think that that's what would happen in jiu-jitsu. Like when you go too far with a submission. Yeah. And I guess just to give people a more realistic impression is that it doesn't actually happen like that. You generally don't see a limb or a joint go in the wrong direction.
Fall back on itself.
No, it has to be quite a severe injury.
Yeah, it'll go to where its end range is, and it'll stay there for a little bit, and then the person who's in it, like if it goes too far, they'll feel an immense amount of pain and there'll be damage to the joint, but you won't actually see like that mutilation.
Yeah, there's usually a lot of before mutilation happens, all the internal tearing,
all the connective tissue has
of ligaments
detach.
And tendons and stuff.
You might get a dislocate.
You could, and obviously some people are way more prone to that, like poor Tom, who Tom is one of our students who wants to come down to Bulletproof. Poor guy has had like for the last 5 months, a debilitating shoulder injury because he was at jiu-jitsu and he heard it by at the end of class, walking out of class and like patting a teammate on the back, to as if to say like, oh, see you, bro. And he went like patted the guy on the back and just boonk, his shoulder went.
For real?
Yeah, that's how he hurt his shoulder.
Jesus. Poor guy.
Yeah.
It's amazing when the little injuries happen, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the internal comp. I was your
we had Joey, one of the refs.
It was awesome. It was a good chance for me to actually look at the rules and learn the rules of jiu-jitsu.
We just had to sell it like with confidence. Even if you weren't sure it was 2 points, boom, if you're confident, no one doubts you, bro.
And you give them that death stare. Like if you fucking dispute my decision, I will wreck you. I remember you can see all of the other refs that have refed every comp you've been to. And they have that look of that like,
blank face.
I fucking know what I'm doing, all right? Even though they've got no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, but it was fun, right? That was for me the first time I've ever refed as well. I mean, I've been offered to ref multiple times for like grappling industries and whatever. But, it doesn't really interest me. It's a lot of work for not much reward. So I've never even had the opportunity to ref either, but it was fun, but I did find it incredibly difficult to referee for my own students and not try to coach them and cheer them on and be like, come on, bro, like, dude, stand up, especially when I knew the advice that they needed was so simple and no one from the crowd was giving it to them. I was like, someone just needs to yell out, break that grip or something, But it was super fun, right, Joe? It was really, really cool.
It was a sick day.
It was later coined the Pineapple Cup because the winners got a trophy, which was literally a pineapple, right? With the big top on it.
Okay.
Which was
what was that inspired by?
A student who said he saw it on Reddit, and I said, good, that's good enough for me, right? Pineapple Cup, right? Instead of
like a cup.
No, like a pineapple.
Yes.
And it's just called a cup the same way that,
You spray painted gold or something like that?
No, but like you might have a championship like the jiu-jitsu.
It was a literal pineapple.
Yeah. And it was just called a cup the same way that you have like
the
Wimbledon Cup or whatever, right?
Yes. You're going to keep that one and pass it on?
yeah, it just becomes like a shrunken head pineapple. Yeah. No, it was cool, because I didn't really want to get medals. It wasn't a serious competition. So I was like, I don't want to go get medals, and some of the students were like, oh, why don't you like give a 6-pack of beer or something? And it's like, well, after the competition, we had like a whole event that was catered with free food and drinks and everything. So I'm not going to give you alcohol when we're going to have a whole catered event after this. It was more the novelty of it,
Yeah.
winner's got a pineapple.
Kind of nice. Pineapple's tropical.
Yeah.
Seems a bit Brazilian.
And now,
Fits.
And now we've decided we'll do another one. It'll be the banana cup. You get like a banana crown if you win instead of a pineapple trophy. And then we can just have different fruit cups. And then then we get the champions of each cup and they fight for a fruit salad. I don't know. It was really just for fun, right? While there was no competitions on, and just to get everyone together. Like I really did want to do something anyway, post lockdown, to thank a lot of the students who continued to support the gym and who bought into the online program that we did during the lockdown, because even though we were offering online content, I said to a lot of students, I understand that this is not a just transaction. I understand that what you're paying for this content is, not worth what you're paying. Like, because some of our members chose to continue to pay their regular membership, right? And I'm like, you're paying the same that you used to pay to access physical jiu-jitsu classes.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how much online content I give you, it's not the same.
I wanted to ask, like, I'm so glad that you made it through and that your gym's open now and it's running and everything. It's awesome. What did you do for the online offering? And
so we did so Joey gave me some advice, and we did very similar to you guys, where we essentially took the complete approach of saying, well, our product has changed. We no longer sell physical jiu-jitsu. We sell online content, and we had so I was constantly recording jiu-jitsu techniques, and we were posting them to the members, and we had we did watch parties where we would this was, again, it seems so long ago that you couldn't be in the same room as people, right? But we'd get together on Zoom and we'd review and watch jiu-jitsu fights, and
that's cool.
And then we would do Zoom classes like you guys, and they would bulletproof for BJJ style classes, because you couldn't really, not many people had a partner to drill with, so we couldn't really do a lot of jiu-jitsu Zoom classes, but we'd just do a workout, and it was really cool. It got
was it every day, something kind of 5 days a week, or
we had something 6 days a week. Yeah. And then once the restrictions started getting lifted a bit, we went from the Zoom classes to then meeting up when you could then do outdoor boot camps or whatever. We would then do the same workout, but we would go meet in a park. So then there was a bit of social interaction, and
cool.
So it was essentially a very similar program to you guys, not to the extent that you guys did. I know that before long you guys had gone back to having all your classes the same timetable, but it was just all online, so we didn't get quite to that extent. We didn't offer anything for kids. I know it was perhaps, something that we should have done, but I just struggled to find
that extra gear
for it to make sense for me to be doing Zoom classes with kids,
You're a one-man band as well.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of help from Hanada, behind the scenes that people don't see.
But you're the one coach.
That's right. Yeah. In terms of who's at the gym, it's all me. I'm the dude. They're teaching, cleaning mats, tying kids' belts because they don't know how to tie them.
I want to ask about that. What's it? 2 years in the business now. What's it been like from, as a small business operator, someone who's growing a gym from the ground up, what's it been like with your training over that time?
What's happened to my training?
Yeah. How do you manage it?
It's had its pros and cons. Obviously, it's a big con is moving away from Brazil, where, I was training with the competition team 5-6 days a week, where you're just getting pushed immensely, to some extent against your own will. You're just getting pushed so hard constantly, to then not have that. And especially in the beginning where you've only kind of got white belt students, you don't really have anyone to push you physically. It definitely makes you learn much more, you have to start solving your own problems. I think a good analogy is if you're, imagine if you were studying engineering and, for your whole career, you you know, you were never the lead engineer, and like anytime you had a problem, you would go to the lead engineer of the project or the lead architect or whatever and ask like, oh, what do we do here, you know? But then if you're the lead engineer or you're the lead architect, that decision, like it falls to you to solve that problem or to sign off on the solution or whatever. So it's sort of similar to that. Like it technically made me evolve much more because I was forced to constantly work out the solution on my own. I couldn't just, it was much easier in Brazil to turn to Fabio or Langy or whoever and just be like, what do you do here? What do you do in this position? You know? And then I was talking to Fabio about it a couple of years ago and he said the same thing. He said that, you know, some of his top students like Marcelo, Lepri, Cobrinha, Malfacini, he said those guys didn't really become like the extraordinary, like they were obviously always very good, you know, and for those who don't know, these are like 4 of the best jiu-jitsu competitors of all time. They were obviously always very good, but it was when they left Fabio's gym and went and did their own thing that they really sort of, you know, went up that next gear because of exactly that, you know, that you're then forced to, you got to solve your own problems and that pushes you. So it's been great for that. And until your moronic training partner blew out your knee, I had a really, that was me. But it wasn't my fault, all right, guys? It wasn't my fault.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things that happen.
Hey, you just kicked me once. We don't kick. We just got frustrated in roundhouse.
You know, obviously, you know, man, like me and Joey have crazy good roles that physically push a lot. But again, it's not the same when you come from training, 5-6 days a week where every single role is, you know, is the equivalent of feeling like you're doing your heaviest superset or something, you know. It's not the same. Like, and so that's why when Joey comes in, when he's healthy, often in the class, like Joey and I will just do like 3 or 4 rounds back to back. Because it's not like we don't want to train with other students, but we get our best training together.
Mad.
In saying that, that's just part of growing a team, right? Like it's not going to be too long before students like Dan and, you know, Jake when he turns up, right?
Who's Jake?
Who's Jake?
Shout out Jakey.
Ollie and, you know, some of those other guys. It's because obviously you get to a point where it plateaus a little bit, right? So it's not going to be too long until they're catching us or enough on our level where then, you know, you go from having like 1 or 2 guys in the gym that can really physically push you to that limit, you know, to then you're like, oh man, I can do like 5 different roles and every role is hard.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, it's been definitely harder like with Joey on the sidelines because we definitely have our best training together. But, you know, is what it is, bro. It just forces you to work on something else. Kind of like you now coming back with your knee. It's like, okay, I can't do a lot of this position. I'll develop this position.
Yeah.
Right? So I've had a really good opportunity to develop a lot more the theory side, I guess you could say, of jiu-jitsu.
That's cool.
And just carry some quarantine dad belly, you know. Just makes my side control heavy. Cake diet.
What do you find in terms of like being the one coach there, and obviously that's not what you always plan to do. Like as you grow, you want to eventually bring more people into the mix.
Sure.
You know, for people who are thinking, you know, looking at that, it's like you coach in the mornings, then you might do some privates in the day, and then you got kids in the afternoon, then you got adults in the evening. So your day can be starting at what time's the earliest class start?
Earliest class is 7.
7 a.m. and then you get out of there. What time at night? Like
8:30 or something. Yeah.
So it's pretty full on. Like it's what we used to do as coaches in the early days, and it's like it's not sustainable. You can do it for a while, right?
Yeah. And it's not even obviously no matter what until I'm at the point of my career where you're getting to the retirement side of your career. Of course, I'll always want to teach the majority of the classes because I find it bizarre that some gyms, you know, the instructor just wants the title or the power of saying like, oh, I'm the head coach.
But I'm over here.
But they're never there. They teach like 1 or 2 classes a week. Oh, I'm the head coach. Like, well, sort of, you know. Like I get that if you're towards if you're closer to the retirement side of your career. I get that, right? Oh man, the dude's like been teaching for 30 years. He's 55. You know, of course he'll forever be the head coach, but he doesn't need to teach 50 classes a week, right? I get that. So, I mean, I'll always teach majority of the classes, but it's not sustainable in terms of the business. You know, if your business can't survive without you, what happens when you're sick? What happens when, you know, you have a family emergency or whatever? You know, to some degree, you have to make yourself replaceable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what's that old saying that
many would argue it's an obligation if you wish to grow as a business owner, you have to find a way to make yourself redundant.
Exactly right. You have to, you know, like, but in saying that, obviously any small business, you do go through that phase. Like you guys were just saying you did. Of course, you go through a phase where you are
the linchpin.
Yeah. Right. The business doesn't survive without you, but you want it to be self-sufficient, the business, that it can go on more or less without you.
Yeah.
To some degree. And then you choose to be a part of it, right? Or you choose to take holidays because you know the business will be okay without you. And, you know, we were getting to that point before the lockdown. And then obviously, everything took a step back. But yeah, we by no means went under. Like we're good. And now we're getting back to the point where, you know, it's not public knowledge yet, but, you know, between Joey and I and, you know, Paulie probably knows as well, I might have another coach, you know, teaching in the, you know, nearish future, which will allow us to expand on the timetable.
Oh, yeah, we're maybe not allowed to break that news yet publicly, are we?
Yeah, no, so keep it on the down low.
A good friend of ours, we could say, is
yeah,
potentially going to be entering the mix.
Yeah, so that will allow me to, you know, expand the timetable and, you know, add more classes, but at the same time, you know, make myself more, you know, dispensable, if you know, replaceable, if you will. But yeah, I look forward to that growth of having more people on hand. Like you guys have how many coaches here now?
Fuck, is it 10 of us all up?
About that,
I think. Yeah.
And how long was it just you three?
It was
you and T.
Me and T
for a few years.
Where were you?
Is in the film industry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. I came in 3.5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, it was you two for a few years, and then brought in one or two coaches. It was Vic and there was Alan, but
Never say his name again.
it probably only took a small portion of it at the time, though. It was only like kind of relieving 10% of the program, and it was mainly just the two guys for many years. And it wasn't really until the last few years where we've had some, you know, solid stable mates here.
And did you guys find when you got to that point, was it like from a business point of view, was it, okay, we have this demand and we have the resources, so we're going to employ a coach? Or was it a bit of, let's put in more class, like a bit more of a field of dreams, build it and they will come. All right, we'll take a bit of a hit paying this coach's salary so we can put in these new classes, but it's like an investment that will get us more members because we have more classes.
Yeah.
Was it
I would say it was a bit of both.
Right.
Because you always like I think there was a point where we're like, we had this gym and we had classes, and this is when it was T and I, and then we had classes in the park at Surrey Hills, and I don't remember what the schedule was at our original gym, the Outpost, but it wasn't like 5, it wasn't like 6 mornings, I don't think. Maybe it was.
I think it was.
But it was always like, it started lean, so it was like we got 1 morning class every day and like 2 evening classes. And so I think we got to a point where we're like, all right, we've got to take this shit seriously, and no one's going to look at a gym seriously as a potential client if it only offers 1 morning class. You got to have a couple of options. And in the evening, you got to have a few options. So we sort of took that plunge of like, all right, we're going to add another 12 classes to the timetable that people probably aren't going to come to for a while. and we're paying a coach to cover them.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind that we ran the majority of everything and we didn't pay ourselves for a long time. So it was like, all right, cool. Then there's no expense on that financially. And then at probably sort of concurrently, we had Alan come into the picture and we're like, all right, let's bring this other coach on. And so we sort of did both, you know, and I would say that we got it to a point where we had some coaches who were taking a decent amount of the load off us. At that point, we started also to be able to pay ourselves a little bit. And so that we're kind of still in that process. We're still talking about adding more classes. Yeah. But at the same time, we're also aware that we've got to keep our expenses down. So it's like, it's always this kind of push and shove, like push and pull rather.
Yeah. We got that happening right now, with the Jitsu timetable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
because you have how many, like just one a day, right?
Two a night. Two classes a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, every night, except for Thursday, there's only one. Because Fight Factory Spas out there.
And then you have one Saturday morning.
Yeah. So we want to, we want full schedule, we want mornings, we want lunchtimes.
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah. Like, I mean, because my timetable at the moment, it has morning, lunch, evenings, but it has evenings every day, but it doesn't have mornings or lunch every day. Like they're staggered. It's just because I don't have the time to teach all of them. And I mean, sure, I could probably like just grab a random like purple belt student and be like, oh, teach this for me. But, my vision for the gym, the same way you guys do with your coaches, you have a whole intern program or whatever, you would never just get some random like, you've just qualified as a personal trainer and did a week work experience of Fitness First. You can coach at Jungle Brothers. Like, it's quality over quantity for me and as it is for you guys, right? So it's hard to find someone, to just throw in as a teacher. Yeah, I think jiu-jitsu is a little, I'm not saying it's different to what you guys do, but different to what people might think about employing someone. It's not as simple to just employ someone to teach jiu-jitsu classes for you. Like one, it's a very niche tool set for someone to have, and then not a lot of people live the jiu-jitsu life. So even if you have someone who's high enough belt and knowledgeable enough, they might have wife, kids, full-time job, they're a banker or something. They don't have the time to teach nor the desire to teach. And then when you have people who do have the desire to teach, like you typically can't offer them enough money for them not to need another job, so then they don't have the time to teach for you because they're either doing their regular job or they're training, and so it's very hard to find someone to tick majority of those boxes, let alone all of them, you know?
Yeah. And it's not like, it's also not like your gym has someone who works the front desk, who manages all the inquiries and the admin and the sales, and the coach just coaches. If you coach at your gym and ours too, in many ways, you have to be able to do all that at the same time.
Like if you have some random walk-in off the street, you need that coach, whoever's coaching for you guys on the ground floor, to be the front desk person when that person goes, oh, what's going on here? Can I do a trial? Same thing at my gym. If I'm not there, and Joey's done it for me when I've been off on to Vegas and stuff.
He's always going to Vegas.
Jiu-jitsu related trips to Vegas. And Joey's taught for me, and, obviously has heaps of experience with that. So when people come in, you know how to deal with that. But some of the other coaches who filled in for me while I was away, so it was just a bit of a Band-Aid solution, or, people who were covering for me when Atlas, my son, was first born, they didn't know a lot of that, they would just kind of say like, oh yeah, cool, Adam will call you tomorrow to sort it out. So it's super hard to find someone to fill those, but the not public knowledge yet, good friend of ours, a bit of a stretch.
A guy we know.
Someone we know, right? That's a really exciting prospect to potentially have someone added to the team, and to help grow the gym. And
good help is hard to find, and
super hard.
What T was saying something the other week to do with our affiliation and how kind of we're going with our business is and I think what you were expressing is the same thing, especially when your business is small, or you're at the beginning, the first few years, and you're trying to coach up those first few people in your stable. You really want the quality at its highest at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because the further and bigger you go, the more there's the chance for dilution on every next level.
Yeah, 100%.
So you don't want to just chuck in some purple belt to fill your schedule.
Yeah.
Based off a business decision to just get more people in and offer more so you can satisfy, that timetable.
Yeah.
You really want them to be like, yeah, it's you or your highest standards.
Yeah, and it doesn't, it doesn't, you got to have your standards and stick to it. It's kind of like if you owned a car dealership and you sold Ferraris and you were like, man, the floor's looking a bit empty. Just chuck some Corollas in there just to fill out the showroom. It's like,
someone wanted a yellow one and we don't have them in yellow. So just chuck in some yellow Corollas.
Yeah. It's like, it's like your quality. It's like, or nothing. Right. But that, on the flip side, that's very hard to do and takes lots of time.
But we made that mistake, in the beginning. I'd say we had a couple of people that we were like, engaged with, without doing the requisite amount of work, like to prepare them and educate them and bring them up to speed on what their standard needed to be. And then, and then you hear a story from a member, so-and-so's class was a bit whatever, or so-and-so said this to me. Do you guys agree with that? And, and you're like, fuck, like we've kind of unleashed a rogue on our crew. And it's so, like when you're in that initial phase, you're so tired and you're so like, kind of stretched.
Joey just wanted a morning off.
I just fucking one morning. And you get someone that's like, I can take mornings, and you're like, oh, amazing, when? Like,
he's really good
tomorrow?
Guy.
And they're like, yeah, sure. And you're like, fuck yes, I'm going to get to sleep until like after 4:45. And then it goes on for a couple of weeks, and then it's like people stop coming to their classes, and then you start to get negative feedback from the members about it, and you're like, why was I so tempted to let them fucking take that position?
Yeah. I mean, it's never foolproof, right? Because you could have the perfect candidate and you don't know until they go do their own thing, right? Till they're left unsupervised. But I think
you got to train them though.
You do, right?
You got to give them that background.
I think I really like, if you haven't noticed already, Joey, I really like analogies of a way of explaining stuff.
I'm still thinking about being an engineer.
Yeah. But again, I think when you're trying to employ a coach or train someone up to be a coach or whatever, it's very similar to if you own a restaurant, because there's plenty of people who own restaurants but aren't chefs, right? But let's say in this case you're the chef as well, but you're not the head chef. You're trying to train someone up to be the head chef. I think like cooking's super similar to jiu-jitsu in the way that you never want to take away the chef's individuality, and and you want to allow him to put his spin on the dishes or whatever, but at the same time you want to be like, bro, this is a French restaurant. Like you can do your twist. I would never want to take away your creativity as a chef, but like you can't make pizza. Like you can't put spaghetti on the menu. Like it's a French restaurant, right?
Yeah,
you
parameters.
Need to be, and I think it's the same with a jiu-jitsu coach. Like you'd never want to take away the flair of, what makes their style unique and the way they do things, but it's still got to be within that mold. It's all things like you guys would know with certain movements or exercises that you're teaching, like you teach things a certain way for a reason, and so an example, when you're teaching beginners in jiu-jitsu, you never teach them combinations. And what I mean by combinations, if you never teach them like, okay, we're going to do this, then our opponent reacts this way, so we do this, and then they do this, we do this. You never, like, it's too much for them to understand. They don't understand, but why would he do that? Like, it's too advanced, So you teach them sequences. You teach them like step 1, then you get to this possession, step 2, right? You teach them how to get from like A to B, right? And because it makes sense to them. So as long as your coach is following like the methodology of teaching, you still want them to have what makes them, because otherwise, I tell you, like they won't hang around, If you try to tell a jiu-jitsu coach exactly what to teach, like, man, tonight you're teaching, an arm bar, and you're teaching it this way, and then this technique, and then this technique, man, no jiu-jitsu coach enjoys that, right? It's telling a chef exactly how to, do the dish. It's like, okay, well, if you're like an apprentice, suck it up, bro, do it. But if you're trying to hand over the reins to someone to be like, you're the head chef, right?
Yep.
Like create the menu. Oh, no, but not like that. It'll never work.
I imagine there's lots of gyms out there that do that in the jiu-jitsu world.
Oh, for sure. No doubt. Right. Yeah. And then they're the same gyms that have the guy who is only there once, twice a week, but he's like the head coach. I know of gyms where the coach is never there. He turns up like once every 6 months for the grading and he's the head coach. And then people say, I'm a black belt under so-and-so. It's like, you've never even done one of his classes. What are you like how
he doesn't know your name.
Yeah. But, I'm just going back to talking about having to do everything on your own and trying to employ people. Like, yeah, I'm definitely and always will stick to like quality over quantity. I don't intend to just like flood my timetable or flood the market with, subpar jiu-jitsu. No Corollas here, baby.
It's the way to go. Be patient.
I got some questions from the fans. Can I throw a couple at you?
Yeah, bro.
One that came through.
Is he really a Poindexter?
Yes. Like, how much of a Poindexter is he? One that came through from Tommy. I don't know Tommy.
Is it Tommy Ten Cans?
Yeah. No, it's Tommy the Tank.
Tommy the Tank.
Tommy the Tank. He said, what was Fabio Gurgel's pressure like in Brazil?
Dude, so
give us a little bit of context on that.
I remember, did I tell, maybe I told, I don't want to tell the same story if I told it last time about like where he had me under pressure and I tapped from it.
And he was super disappointed?
Yeah, did I tell that story? You would have heard the story.
I've heard it. I think you remember?
Is it the one where you teared up?
I pretty much cried. I won't go in, long story short, like I tapped when I shouldn't have.
Okay.
But yeah, Tom, his pressure was like next level. It's really hard to describe how debilitating his pressure is. I think a similarity is if you've ever trained with like a wrestler, like as in a college wrestler, their ability to pin your shoulders, because that's what they need to do to win, right? It's the ability to put your weight on a dime. And so if you look at some of Fabio's students, like Langy's a good example. Langy was, a 3 or 4 time lightweight world champion. So he's not a heavy dude, but he learned how to put pressure on because he trained with Fabio. And when you can put that like 70 kilos on a dime and it's on the correct dime, that's what makes someone heavy, right? So it's not about how physically heavy someone is. A lightweight can be heavy, but like a simple example is if I want to turn my shoulders this way, bro, you could put 100 kilos on the wrong shoulder and I can still turn my shoulders, but put 20 kilos on this shoulder and it'll be hard to turn my shoulders in that direction. So then when you add to that Fabio in his prime, was 100 kilos or, 95, dude, so heavy. I remember once when I was blue belt, I swept him and it was like with 10 seconds to go in the round. And like the timer went and Fabio was so pissed. He banged to the mat and he was like, fuck, I wasn't counting on that last movement. Right. And like, because he ran out of time, he didn't have time to get me back. And I was just like, I'm done. I should just retire. Like, that doesn't get any better than that, So Tom obviously knows who Fabio is, but for those who don't, like he's famous for his top pressure. And it's just debilitating. It's bizarre how he can be so heavy. Luckily now he's more or less retired. I don't have to experience that squash anymore,
You've adopted a bit of that, so you like the heavy top pressure, don't you?
Yeah, and it's also like, and you've seen it, Joe, like when I teach the shoulder pressure, there's technique behind it as well, right? There's a difference between shoulder pressure and just cross-face pressure. So there's technique behind being heavy as well. But yeah, I think the ability to put your weight, like all of your weight on such a focal point, is what makes someone super heavy.
Yeah.
And I think you could describe his style as smothering would be, it's heavy, but I think a good way to think about it as well is that it's just smothering.
Yeah.
You're just getting smothered the entire time. You can't do anything. Oh. He's old now. Don't worry about it.
There's days behind him. I got another question here. I'm going to keep these ones anonymous. Dealing with burnout and what to do when you feel like you're stuck in your progression. This is for more of an advanced practitioner.
Yeah, for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, for sure, it happens to everyone because it's such a long-term journey, and it's very easy to not see your progress because the easiest people for you to compare yourself to are your training partners who are also progressing. For me, what I found works the best to not burn out is I'm constantly changing what I do. Of course, if I'm competing, I have like my A game that I'll fall to, and not fall to, I would have prepared, you know, that A game for that particular competition. But if I'm just training, for me, I treat it like the same way. Let's say if you're playing a video game, let's say you're, I don't know, whatever, like you're playing Street Fighter or something.
I'm still in the yellow Corolla.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, you burn out if you just play that same character in that same game hour after hour, day after day. It's like, man, like if you pick a different character, it's like a whole new game all of a sudden, you know? So for me, you know, the way I avoid burnout is I'll try something for a while and then I try something new because I enjoy it. Like it's so easy to forget that we do jiu-jitsu because we enjoy it, you know? And I actually try to avoid doing my A game unless I'm preparing for a competition. And like a good example was Bernardo Faria was the same as well. He almost never did his A game in the gym. Man, like he trained super hard, but he almost never did it. And then when it was comp time, it was all deep half guard, over under pass, you know. But in the gym, he was so dynamic and, you know, was so open in his training. And I try to do the same. I have fun, you know. I do what I think is fun, you know, within the rules of the sport of jiu-jitsu, unless I'm preparing to compete. When you're preparing to compete, man, sometimes you just have to suck it up. Like it's like no one really enjoys a fight camp. Right? Like not many like MMA fighters go, I love the grind of an 8-week fight camp. No, it's like punishing, bro. So if you're at that advanced level of competing, man, it's going to be hard. There's no way for it not to be hard.
Yeah.
But in day-to-day training, man, you got to have fun. If you're having fun doing bolos, man, you might suck at them, but just do them. Who cares if someone else takes your back or you get past? Like it doesn't matter. Like you're doing the sport because you enjoy doing the sport. You know, like some people go surfing even when there's no good waves just because they enjoy like splashing around in the water with their board. Like they do it because it's fun, right? So you got to find the fun to not burn out, right? And I even do the same approach with lifting, right? Like I don't particularly enjoy lifting as in weightlifting very much, probably because I'm so bad at it, but I don't enjoy it the same way some people do. Some people enjoy lifting, like they love it, right? I do it because it helps my jiu-jitsu. But then when I'm going to lift, because I don't enjoy it as much, I do lifts that I think are fun. I enjoy deadlifts, right? So I kind of like, you know, try to do the parts
find a middle ground.
Yeah, because otherwise if I'm just doing like, you know, what is on my program, I find it really hard and not super enjoyable. And that's when I burn out and don't want to do it. So long story short, Mr. Anonymous, you got to find the fun, bro. To open some lapels, play some Top Gun, whatever you're having fun with, man. Flying triangles. You know.
I like that. I've got an opinion on it, which is a bit counter, but I find it complimentary. Because it's talking from my perspective with what I went through with jiu-jitsu, which is that I got my brown belt 5 years ago this week. Did you know?
This week, 5 years?
Yeah, I think it was on Monday as it popped up on my Facebook. It's like 5 years ago.
Have you been on your toes yet in closed guard? Because, you know, that's the...
yeah. I'm against that.
Yeah.
This is maybe a relevant thing for some people is to think that I've had my brown belt for as long as it took me to get to brown belt. Like I can't remember, maybe it took me it probably took me 5 years to get there, right? So when I got it, I was already at a stage of burnout and I wasn't really enjoying it all that much. And it also coincided with us opening the gym. So I just took a break from it for a couple of years. And then I started training at another gym for a while and was having a good time, but I wasn't progressing with it at all. So I was kind of stuck in this progression thing totally. And then I started training with you, Ads. We became mates. I started training with you. And then that's when it all changed for me. So, you know, I'm grateful to you for having kind of rekindled my passion for the sport and my interest in it. and it's kind of black and white how I feel about it now to how I felt about it then. At that point, I was like, maybe I'm just going to give it away and I'll just be a brown belt forever and that's sick. Whereas now I'm like, no, I'm definitely going to get a black belt and I'm definitely going to continue pushing with this.
Sorry to interrupt, Joey. Yeah, it's interesting because I guess I answered Mr. Anonymous's question just assuming that everything else was fine. And I guess because for me it was, you know, like I've only had 2 gyms in my life. The first gym I started at when I picked up Jiu-Jitsu in Canada, and then Fabio, right? So I've only ever been at 2 gyms and both were fine. Obviously Fabio was where like I found my home. So I just assumed everything was right. But yeah, I guess what if the, you know, Mr. Anonymous's situation is similar to like what yours was? Is he burning out because, to put it bluntly, he's at not the best gym for him? You know, maybe it's a great gym, but it's just not, maybe it's not very conducive to the way he learns and he progresses, because every coach teaches different, and you could be the best coach in the world. Some people aren't going to like to learn from, they're not going to like your style of teaching. You can't make everyone happy, and that's fine. So maybe the gym he's at's fine, but maybe it's not right for him. Or maybe, unfortunately, he is at a bad gym. He's not getting the attention he needs to progress. He's not getting pushed appropriately by his coach in a good way. You know, maybe he's not getting treated properly at his gym, you know? So I guess, you know, if everything's fine at his gym, then I guess my original point I still stick to, man, you got to find the fun. And I guess that's true anyway. But yeah, if there's other factors to consider, like the situation you were in, Joey, then you got to look at that, man. And that goes back to, again, we might have talked about it last time, or Joey's heard me rant about this. I find it ridiculous, the people who like feel like they owe something to their gym or that their gym owns them. And I know so many people that hate the gyms that they're at and don't leave because of like loyalty and whatever. And it's like, man, it's ridiculous. Like I get
social
that.
pressure.
But you don't owe your coach anything. I get that you build camaraderie with them, but man, like you pay them money for a service, you know, and if they're not providing that service, off you go, man. Like find somewhere else to train.
But really though, stay Jungle Brothers.
Yeah. Jungle Brothers for life. Yeah. No matter what.
You owe me, kids.
But you know what I mean, right? So
as an idea though, that I was going to get to with that idea of like the black and white feeling for me was that prior to, for a long period at the gym that I was at up to brown belt, and then the gym that I went and trained at when I had my brown belt where I wasn't making any progression, I was never actively involved in a coaching relationship. So there was essentially like I was just turning up and doing whatever I did. So I was expressing bad habits, like in terms of my technique. I was making silly mistakes and the same mistakes all the time. And there was no one that was like, man, why do you keep doing that fucking thing? Whenever the person does X, you need to do Y. And like coaching me, right? Like giving me those little things that make me better. Which is what I got with you. You were like from day one, you're like, bro, you need to do this.
Man,
bro,
if you
stop
remember,
doing that.
like I remember it vividly, like when we first rolled, like when, so Joey and I met through a mutual friend, JT, who's the other half, or James is the other half of Bulletproof. And James and I know each other from Brazil. So James introduced me to Joey because James lives in Melbourne, and he was like, man, if you're not training with me, like strength and conditioning stuff, if you're not training with me, you've got to train with Joey. And that's how we met.
Right.
And I remember when Joey and I first rolled, it was when James and I came in here and we rolled some no-gi. And it might have even been that very first day. I, like, in a very nice way, was just straight up like, bro, your X guard's trash. Like, why do you keep doing this? You keep doing this. Like, what? Stop doing, like, you know, and we, you know, it wasn't as simple as that. We explained like why, you know, why you need to be doing it not like that because you're creating this problem and you should be positioning your hips here, blah, 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 blah. And man, and you know now when you and I roll, like if I end up in your X guard, I'm in heaps of trouble, you know, whereas when in the beginning, it was just like cake. I passed your X guard so easily all the time. And I would just let you pull X guard and it was just a free pass to side control or mount. Whereas now I actively avoid getting in your X guard because when you get X guard on me, I'm then in heaps of trouble, right? It's improved so much, and it wasn't a lot we had to change about it. You know, it was just some, which, you know, I guess, yeah, if you weren't getting any of that coaching, and I really try to coach each student individually, you know, obviously when you're teaching a group class, you've got to just teach whatever you're teaching. But if you have that one student, and I know you guys do this too, if you're teaching whatever and you have that one student who, for whatever reason, like they're doing the deadlift and risk putting their back out because they're missing a detail on the technique, you're going to go help that one student. You don't have to stop the whole class, right? And I try to do the same thing, right? Try to really help each individual student, because everyone has their own problems, especially in something as dynamic as jiu-jitsu, where not everyone has the same range of motion in their limbs and, or in their joints and whatever. Not everyone moves the same. So people have different problems, and you got to find different solutions, or you have to give them the tools to find the solutions for their own problems.
I think that there's an equal part. Like, I think that I'm fortunate to have started training under you for that. But then I think that there's also an equal onus on the student to seek the information.
I 100% agree.
Where it's like after class or in class, like, man, what am I doing wrong here? How come I keep getting caught in this? And so it's just engaging in that coaching process.
Yeah.
And it's the right coach and the right student. And it's like, okay, now you're in an environment that can foster your growth, because both parties are committed to the development.
Yeah. And obviously different people get into it for different reasons. And, some people get into, jiu-jitsu offers so many positives, that some people get into it solely for like the social aspect, right? Which is fine. Like, jiu-jitsu can offer you that, right? So they might not actually really care that much about their progression. They're just in it for the social aspect, and that's cool, right? You may never get a black belt, but that's cool that you're getting out of jiu-jitsu what you want. But if you're really wanting to progress, and I go off on another, I should just be called Analogy Adam, I guess, and because I've had some students that, when they have a problem that's specific to them, they then come to me saying like, you should do a class where you teach this, right? And of course that problem probably gets taught at some stage, but it's kind of like if you're at uni.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go, right? Because the joke in jiu-jitsu, right, is that you can become a doctor quicker than you can get a black belt, right? It takes years to get a black belt. And it's like, if you're at uni studying
I'm still playing Street Fighter, but
you're still playing Street Fighter.
I'm splashing around in the surf.
Like if you're at uni studying whatever, let's say to be a doctor, and the only time you like switch your brain on towards medicine is when you're at uni and in class, man, you're probably not going to pass and become a doctor, right? You don't think like med students or lawyers or any university student isn't having to study in their own time. And are they given what to study? Sometimes, but sometimes, like, you and I are both at med school, but I have
smoking bongs at lunchtime.
Yeah. Baked all the time. Maybe I struggle memorizing like the names of, the different bones in the body, right? But you got that day one and you're struggling with, what causes such and such. Does it, so you're going to go off and fix that on your own, study that. I'm going to be trying to memorize the names of the bones, and it's the same for jiu-jitsu. If you really want to progress and you're only focusing on it, like when you're at class doing what the teacher's telling you to do, and you're not taking any initiative on your own to improve your knowledge, man, your progress is going to be super slow, and you're probably not going to like pass that test that comes at the end of your studies, And so now I've got, it's starting to change in my gym, because I've been hammering on about that for a little while. I've got now two white belts, actually, Dave and Sagi, who every Friday they come get the keys off me for the gym, because my gym isn't like this one where there's usually someone here most of the time. I'm kind of only there when it's open, when there's a class on, right? But people are free to use the mats. They just got to let me know, So now these guys get the keys off me like every Friday, or like I just go and open it up. They go in, drill, work on whatever they want to work on, and they, and that's exactly what I want to see students doing. Like I actually had a dig at some of my students the other night, and I know you've spoken about this, Joey, how like when people are before class, you like to see them like taking the initiative and warming up, doing their monster walks or whatever it is before class on their own without being told to, right? And I had the other day where I was in the middle of class and someone came in like to make an inquiry. So like you said, I'm the front desk guy too. So I kind of just left the class for a minute to go talk to this guy. And then instead of the guys just like keep doing the repetitions of the technique, like once the timer stopped, they all just sat around and waited for me to come back. And I was like, and when I came back, I was like, oh, good to see you guys like kept practicing while I was gone. You know, it's like, you're not being punished, bro. Like you're here to learn. Like why not just take the extra minute that you've got? Yes. And keep, you know,
work on some shit.
Or people look at the timer, you know, we often do like 3 minutes each and they look at the timer and there's like 30 seconds left and they stop already. But you can fit in like 3 more reps, bro. You're like, 30 seconds to go, you know.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth another rep. Yeah.
How about that pineapple cup? Yeah. I got a couple more questions. What advice do you have for white belts who are struggling to find what works for them?
I mean, white belt's a super early point in your jiu-jitsu career to develop your own style or to find what part of jiu-jitsu you like. I think a good thing to focus on is understanding your guard a little bit more because it's the less intuitive part of jiu-jitsu. You know, that's why some gyms tell white belts in the beginning, just like, you know, take them down, stay on top, you know, because it's much more intuitive to think like be on top of someone and hold them down. You know, if all else fails and you don't know what to do, just be on top, right? So then white belts are left without any sort of guard development for quite a while. So they kind of are not even given the opportunity to see if they enjoy playing guard, you know? So I think, and then to elaborate on that, the way jiu-jitsu is nowadays, it's all about open guard, you know? So when I say guard, I really mean you have to learn to be comfortable to have open guard and not just instantly get past, right? And then from there, like once you're comfortable there, you're going to be able to develop from that. Once you're comfortable in not getting past as soon as your guard opens or not getting past when you fail a sweep or fail a submission, you then get comfortable to attempt stuff. Whereas if you're still at the point where every attempt is met with a guard pass or getting submitted, you become very hesitant to try anything because everything I've ever tried has failed.
Punished.
Right? But you kind of have to take a step back and look at a bit of like guard retention and some core principles to be able to, you know, the same way a boxer learns how to throw a punch that might miss but doesn't result in them getting knocked out, right? You know, imagine if every punch a boxer missed meant they got punched in the face. You know, like, okay, sometimes that happens, but it's not the reality of the fight. And, you know, just to sum that up, I think white belts, if you're not given the opportunity to see if you enjoy guard, you're going to be felt a bit lost as to, man, do I enjoy passing? Because that's a very easy way to split it. Do you enjoy passing or do you enjoy playing guard? Once you've decided that, you know, okay, I enjoy passing. All right. Do you enjoy pressure passing? You know, do you like the slow grind or are you a smaller, agile dude and you want to look towards more agility-based passes? So, I mean, I would think it's quite a broad question, but if you're not given the opportunity to experiment all the different aspects, you know, all with air quotes, right? How are you supposed to make an educated decision about what you sort of want to pursue?
Next question is, what's his opinion of this mullet?
Oh my God. Who's that from? Is someone I know?
Walshy. No, you don't know Walshy.
Fucking mullets, bro. I'm actually like, is like,
be honest.
Is this public knowledge?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, it's not, but it is.
Well, it's not like it's not secret anymore. I'm actually like looking forward to. I hate mullets. They're ridiculous. They're stupid.
Bang.
Hate them. And Joey knows.
As a previous owner of a mullet.
Yeah. So we were talking about like horrible haircuts as kids, and what was it like?
I said
you said you had a rat tail,
and I said,
right?
I had
a rat tail.
No, Ads is like, I had a mullet once, did you know? And we were all like, oh, that's so funny. He's like, yeah, it was shocking. And then I was like, bro, I had a fringe. And
first I said I had a rat tail is what it,
right. Is that what,
someone,
but I was like, bro, I had a fringe. And then everyone was like, oh, and then Ads is like, all right, I actually wasn't going to tell you guys, but I had a mullet and a fringe at the same time.
So bad. But I'm actually looking forward to like, in 10 years time, whatever it is, maybe it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, and we look back at photos of you holding your newborn baby with a mullet, and then your son or daughter's there going like, Dad, I can't believe you had a mullet. And then even when you're going, I know, ads told me to get rid of it. And I'll be like, bro, it looks so ridiculous.
What are you thinking? So what's your opinion of it?
It's terrible. What was it? So it was actually perfectly timed the other day in the gym. Like, what'd I say? I was like, "Oh, guys, don't let Joey's mullet fool you. He's actually a pretty bright guy." And Joey didn't hear me, and he turns around and goes, "What?"
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Dog. I got a couple more questions, if we may.
Shoot.
How do you go about rolling with much lighter opponents without giving too much of your game up? So I think the context here is like, this is from someone who's trying not to just use all of their weight and strength against someone that's smaller, but then they end up just being shit at jiu-jitsu and letting a smaller person
smash them.
So how do you go about that? Because we've had this chat.
That's a good question.
As bigger individuals.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm pretty staunch.
Yeah.
No.
How tall are you?
6'4", so like 194.
194 centimeters. Yeah.
For the people who
and over 100.
I would be, I'd probably be 100 right now. Yeah. I mean, I used to compete at 88 in the gi, which means 86 kilos without. And then more recently now, like before the lockdown weight, I would compete at 94. And now I've sort of just stayed in dad bod mode at 100, like a healthy 100, I think.
Yeah, festively plump.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a slightly broad question because it depends on like some people have like a big person game because they don't have another option. And what I mean by that is if you have a big person game because you're for like, you know, like short and kind of overweight and everything, you might not have a lot of options other than having that like top heavy half guard or like bottom half guard game where, you know, you sweep someone with good hip mobility or whatever, right? You don't have the mobility to start, you know, inverting and all that part of jiu-jitsu. So, but let's imagine that that's not the case, right? Let's imagine you're able to move a bit more dynamically and you want to train with a lighter person, right? Well, you just got to focus on some of the finer details, you know? So if I'm training with someone light and I want to do, let's say, a particular sweep that typically might require quite a bit of like explosive strength to do if like Joey and I were training together, and it's like, man, to hit this against someone who's, you know, within the same realm of weight, you know, more or less, it's going to it's going to require like a mass amount of like strength and explosion, which there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's an aspect of a combat sport. But if I'm training with like a 50 kilo guy, or, you know, even some of the girls, I'm just going to shift my mindset a little bit and be like, okay, well, for this to work, it needs to be timed perfectly, you know? So then I'll take away the sort of explosive strength aspect of it and focus a little bit more on making sure, man, are my grips 100% set? And am I timing that on the exact moment that like I've, you know, shifted their base to whatever leg and then boom, you know, and hit the sweep, you know? So I'm focusing a little bit more on like, you know, taking out like one attribute to put in another one, if you know what I mean.
But still adhering to the quality and the execution of the technique.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, but just not backing it up with all of your might.
Yeah, but like you know, I will finish that point with saying that there is, of course, if you're the 100 kilo guy training with the 50 kilo, you know, girl, right? You have to take that into consideration, and you know, you're not going to use all your weight or your strength because it's just not, you know, it's not super nice thing to do. But if you just have a slightly different weight advantage or whatever with a training partner who you can still train hard with, there's nothing wrong with using like your size and strength. It's an attribute that you have. And, you know, complaining about someone, oh man, you know, you're just so strong there or whatever. Like, it's kind of like complaining if a small person is really agile and really fast. Or you only beat me because you're fast. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm fast. You know, what are you going to do about it, right? Like,
it's a good point.
And because that argument can be made even within the same weight division, right? There's like guys in the 88 kilo bracket, some that are like, you know, maybe a bit like taller and agile, and then you got like short, stocky, strong dudes, right? And you use what you have against your opponent, right? And you have to make that call. You have to match that up. And sometimes even if you have a strong person game, sometimes in the particular matchup, you are the small, agile person. And then all of a sudden you have to, you know, adapt a small, agile game, because then you're used to being the stronger person. Then like, oh man, now I'm actually the weak person.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I'm pretty tall, but I've fought guys taller than me. And then I have to like be like, okay, man, you don't have a leverage advantage. You don't have a reach advantage here. You're now the short guy.
Yeah.
So you got to fight like a short guy, right? So there's nothing wrong with using your strength, but if the point this guy's making is to how do I train with that lighter partner without hurting them and making sure I'm still progressing my jiu-jitsu, yeah, take out the strength attribute, put another one in. You know, like ideally you have all the attributes, but take out the strength aspect, put in timing, put in like, are my grips perfect? You know, and make it work.
I like that. What would you do for the opposite? So for someone who is, when you're a smaller person and you're rolling with someone who's much bigger and heavier than you, and when that person just tries to muscle you.
Yeah, so you've got to be, you have to be like almost something out of a cartoon. Like if you think of a cartoon where you've got like a massive ogre, the big guy will be the ogre in this situation. And then you've got like the hero who's a little dude who's like, you know, running around on his back, and the ogre's trying to claw him off his back and can never catch him. And the ogre starts punching himself in the face, right? You have to be super dynamic and super fast, because that's an attribute that your opponent doesn't have. And even if you're the little fast guy who may be very strong for your size, you're not as strong as the big guy. So you can't, if you watch any absolutes where it's like a little guy, like a massively different like matchup, you never see a little guy sort of, you know, mounting a big guy and holding mount. Like, because he physically can't. Like the guy will just bridge and roll him, you know, like it's just not possible. You have to be that little guy that when he tries to bridge him out, boom, you duck around to his back. When you can't hold him down in side control. So when he turns into you to escape side control, you go around north-south to the other side of side control or to the back again, right? So because like I said, that's an attribute that he doesn't have. You have to, like, you almost can't be stationary to an extent.
Yeah.
Right. Not 100% can't be stationary, because you need to consolidate positions, but don't think like if there's a massive size difference, you're not going to be able to hold them down. It's just the reality of it. Like you won't be able to. I don't care who you are. If you could be like Malfacini, put Malfacini on top of like, you know, Buchecha, or put Malfacini on top of Brock Lesnar, and like, man, those dudes are getting out, right? There's no way Malfacini's holding them down, right? But, you know, if he doesn't think about holding him down and thinks about as soon as he moves, I'm going to duck around to the back before he even knows it, it'll be like he teleports there. And I mean, and I've rolled with Malfacini and he literally teleports.
What's he weigh?
Dude, he fights rooster weight. So that's like, what is that? 50, 55 or something, is it?
Jesus.
Dude, he's so tiny. I think I've told the story before about like how I was rolling with him and he had De La Riva and he had the ankle grip. And you know how like you kick your leg back on that diagonal to strip the ankle grip? And I did that, and before my foot went back on the ground, he was up and had me in a double leg. Like that's how fast, dude, he's so fast. Like, you know, I mean, I was a blue belt at the time, but still like I was a 90 kilo blue belt, you know, training at Fabio's gym. It wasn't like I was just a fresh chump blue belt. He teleports, bro. It's like Nightcrawler out of X-Men. He just goes.
I got one last question, and this comes from the two enforcer blue belts at your gym, Jake and Dan.
I can't get rid of them, bro.
They want to know why, after a year of training nearly every day, you're still out of shape. And is your 10-year goal to eventually get to 2 full pull-ups?
Is that what they actually said?
Yeah. I'll show you the WhatsApp.
Oh, no. So it's funny. I'll tell you a funny story about Jake. Was it the other day, Jake came in to train. Jake tries to get out of training as much as possible. And he came in to train And what did he do? Jake's a blue belt, and good blue belt too, you know. And he did 3 5-minute rounds, which for those who don't train jiu-jitsu is like nothing. That's like a very, very easy class. And he picked out the 3 injured white belts who were the guys who were like, oh man, I can't really roll properly. Dude, and at the end of the class, Jake, I've never seen his hair so wet. He was drenched in sweat, just limped out of the class. But they're not wrong. I can't do pull-ups. I mean, Joey's seen it. I'm atrocious at pull-ups. It's probably my strength and conditioning coach's fault. Yeah. I said at the start, I'm super bad at lifting. But I don't know, like on a more serious note, we did speak about this that, and Jake, because Jake does, Jake and Dan are both blue belts of mine, and Jake does bulletproof with me, with Joey. And Jake and myself have legitimately put the question to Joey, like, why is it that I'm not being silly. I am very weak when it comes to lifting, right? I'm not strong at all at like pull and push movements, but I'm super strong in jiu-jitsu, right? Like, and Jake was asking, why is it that I can, like, you know, do weighted chin-ups for X amount of reps, and Adam can't even do one, right? But then when we're on the mats, like, man, and he's got my sleeve and he's pulling and whatever, it's just it's impossible. So strong. You know, and we kind of chatted a bit about it, and I don't know if we came to a conclusion, but yeah, I think I'm jiu-jitsu strong, but definitely not pull-up strong.
Yeah, it's an interesting paradigm that you can be, you know, kind of weaker in those formalized strength movements, but then incredibly strong on the mats. But I think that it just comes down to your technique, and that you just have exceptional technique, which allows you to express huge amounts of force in the right time. In the right place. And for the untrained, or not untrained, but just for the person who's on the receiving end of that, it's like, oh fuck, you're so strong. Whereas it's not really, and that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, right? It's like, well, actually it's not really strength. It's just, it's technique.
Yeah, I think it's kind of similar to like a judo throw. Like if a judo throw is perfectly timed, like don't get me wrong, judo, like jiu-jitsu, does have a lot of strength involved, but you know, a perfectly timed judo throw, like it's almost effortless, if you know what I mean. But if you're on the receiving end, it feels like you just got thrown through a wall, right? You know, despite the guy having just perfectly gone pop and, like, you know, kicked your feet out from underneath you because the timing and technique was so correct, right? Yeah. Makes sense.
And I think it also goes back to that discussion about attributes, and that you use what you have.
Yeah.
And so, like, say for me, strength has always been something that I've naturally, I've always felt naturally strong. And then when I started doing gym stuff, I'm kind of, you could say, moderately successful with my gym training. So when I train jiu-jitsu, I use that strength. Yeah. But if I look at, like as a typical example, smaller jiu-jitsu players who I know who don't naturally have, they might be strong for their size, but when they're training against someone like me, their strength isn't really a factor.
Yeah.
Which forces them to develop their technical proficiency is much greater than mine because they have to use that. Yeah. They have to rely on technique, whereas I can fall back on the strength.
Yeah.
So in a sense that part of their game evolves where their technique gets super sharp.
Yeah. I think it'll always be like that, right? You know, when you don't have strength to use, you're kind of forced to then have to invert and do all that, like the little person game. And that's why the littler guys are crazy technical. Like you look at guys like Musameshi and all that, and they're just absurdly technical.
You see Mikey Musameshi, he just entered the super heavyweight division of the next comp.
Pans,
yeah, Pan
I
Ams.
didn't see yet, but
he's like he's 60 odd kilos.
Yeah, and he's
entered.
Well, I'm not sure what he is now.
Ultra heavy.
He fought.
Are you allowed to?
Yeah, you can enter.
He won absolute last year.
No, he didn't win the absolute, but he beat. Was it Muhammad he beat? Muhammad Ali? Or was it Kainet? No, he beat
and
Muhammad,
he fought a giant.
Yeah, he wants to win an absolute, right? He would have to be, like, I'm not sure if this is factual, but I believe he would be, if he wins an absolute, he would be the smallest black belt absolute winner ever, I believe.
Absolute's the open weight category for folks.
Open weight, yeah. But I didn't see, do you happen to know what team he registered under? Because he left Kayotera's team.
Oh, no, I don't.
So people were like, "Oh, has he left to start a team on his own with his sister?" Or, I don't know.
Maybe Jungle Brothers should reach out.
Yeah. I'm not super up to date with the news because it's owned by a flow grappling monopoly.
I got another thought on the strength thing for you, which is that you're a highly competitive individual in jiu-jitsu, and not to say that it's used irresponsibly, but you are very driven when it comes down to it, and you have a desire to express your best performance. And I know this when we get into the really hard rounds, that like the intensity obviously elevates between us and it gets hyper competitive, which doesn't mean you're like that every roll, right? Or with like a new white belt or whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't have that same fire for
lifting,
pull-ups or squats. So I would argue that if there were a way to transport that same fire to the gym, that you would be able to do those things.
Yeah, perhaps, right? That's an interesting thought.
I think it's largely a mental drive.
Yeah.
Which is not a criticism, it's just an observation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would agree, because I definitely don't have a passion for pull-ups. I don't. Don't get me wrong, I love them, but it's, there's a lot of strength movements that it's like, what do you say when I was asking you about working towards, I think it was like a forehead to knees or some sort of goal when you're working towards splits, and you said it's like a meat factory.
Sausage
factory. No one wants to actually know what's involved to get the end product, right? Because if you knew, you wouldn't eat the sausage, right? And there's so many strength movements that I think are beautiful, but I don't think I would ever, I don't have enough desire or fire to put in the work. Like, let's say like a muscle up, man, muscle ups are awesome, but I'm never, I would love to, it's on my hypothetical bucket list, but I don't think it'll ever happen. Like deadlifting 200 kgs, I'd love to be able to do that. And I know if I had the fire, I could get there. It's not like I have any physical restrictions, like I've got a dodgy back or something and it's not possible, but I just don't have enough fire to put in the work for it. I don't think.
Yeah.
There's lots of, I'd love to speak French, but there's lots of things I'd love to be able,
Norwegian,
but that's it. Yeah. I think I would agree with that. I don't have the fire for pull-ups. Do you guys have the fire for pull-ups? You like it? What's your favorite lift? Or what's your favorite strength movement? Whether it's a handstand, maybe something a bit more that's maybe not so mobility dependent. What's your favorite strength exercise? Like for me, who doesn't do a lot of lifting and doesn't enjoy it, I like deadlifts. I do enjoy doing deadlifts, even if they're not heavy, right? I like the movement of deadlifts. What one do you enjoy doing?
I go through different ones that I'm interested in at different times. I like power cleans on the bar.
Cool.
Yeah, I like that. What
about you, Joey?
I don't really know, to be honest. I guess I like, I do like squat variations. Not necessarily, I like front squats and I like split squats and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of like that because, my squat mobility has always been pretty good until this year. So it's a fun movement for me.
Yeah. Squats are hard, bro.
Squats are. I mean, deadlifts is about as easy as it gets.
Yeah,
right. Like the bar travels about.
Yeah.
From half a meter to 750 centimeters.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and bicep curls, right? It's all about the bicep curls. Yeah. Yeah. I know I don't enjoy the burn of squats. They're hard.
Yeah.
Pistol squats. Oh, ruined my day.
Jesus. How about push-ups? How do you go with push-ups?
As if you guys aren't looking, normal push-ups, fine. Proper Jungle Brothers push-ups, they're
good. You got some.
I can do them because Joey showed me how, but without, most of the listeners, have probably trained here or seen what you guys do, so they've probably done them. They know what we're talking about, but for the people who don't, it's very different. Would you classify it as like a gymnastics push-up, or I don't know what you would label it, but it's different to what you think. Just do a push-up. Like I had the guys at my gym do it the other night. And I said, guys, I want you to aim for 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps, right?
Yeah.
But proper, when we went over how to do them.
Yep.
And you guys know it's like even 5 is, if you don't do it all the time, 5 is hard until your technique starts failing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I can do them like the the push-ups.
You can get up and down
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even for me, after 5, like, you know, my hips start sagging a little bit, you know, regular push-ups are like, whatever.
Bust them out.
But I don't mind the push-ups that you do here, but they are difficult. I don't think I enjoy them like deadlifts. They're very hard. But they're very good. I see I enjoy that. I almost feel like the instant result almost, you know, like I feel it, like it makes sense. But when I just like use all my energy to do one chin up, I'm like, why? What a waste this. What a waste. Right? And now I'm tired. You know?
I only asked about the push-ups because you got the long arms and they're often hard.
It is a long way to travel.
Yeah.
Big distance.
Dan and Jake, those losers who sent through that ridiculous question. Yeah, they're always like saying stuff, and I'm like, man, I got further to go. Like, what was it I did? So the other day, Jake and I on Wednesday were doing bulletproof, and we went for a 1 rep max Harrop curl, right? They're called Harrop curls.
Yeah.
And they're horrible, like 1 rep max exercise to do, because we both, like, our calf muscles almost exploded and detached from our knees, you know, like just cramped so hard. But, you know, it's for those who don't know, you measure like the way that it's measured in distance for how hard it is, right? And so I got to 94 centimeters. And then we got Dan to do it at the gym, and he had the same thing. His calves exploded. And then their excuse was, oh, but your torso's longer, so of course you're going to measure longer. And I'm like, yeah, but then it's more mass that I'm picking back up. And they're like, here you go again with the tall person excuses. And I'm like, it's physics, bro. Get into this argument. You know, I've spoken to
like, imagine you're a Lego man. And
I'm like, let me tell you an analogy that'll really make this make sense.
Oh man, that's sick. I enjoyed that jiu-jitsu Q&A.
It was good. I also enjoyed the business conversation we had at the start. Bit of business for everyone.
Yeah, bit of biz.
And a bit of jiu-jitsu banter. We didn't really talk, you know, we only briefly mentioned like about, more when we're talking about business, about training coaches and stuff in the jiu-jitsu program here and everything. We didn't, because I can't remember when I was last on, had you started jiu-jitsu here or you were about to? It was, or if you had started, it was super fresh.
Would have been on.
So we didn't really
probably wouldn't have been at what it is now, because we only really started the full schedule, as we call it, on the mezzanine at the beginning of this year. It was.
Yeah.
January. So yeah, it would have been
got to tee it up, get me down for a class.
Well, we want to get you in for a workshop.
Yeah, how many people can you have upstairs at the moment?
We're limited to 15, I think.
Yeah, we've got 15. Technically, we can have more than that.
Yeah.
18. We just like by square meterage, but we just brought it down a little bit.
Yeah, just
keep it chill.
Give yourself that bit of wiggle room.
Yeah,
So
15 works. That's about time, isn't it?
Yeah, we just got to tee up a time, bro. I'm down.
Yeah, fucking oath.
Yeah.
Teach them the infamous ACL destruction technique you use.
This is how you ruin your training
Guys,
partners,
this works on really strong dudes.
Yeah. You got a guy with great range of motion in his knees, quads as thick as tree trunks, still works. And don't get me started on the hamstring that replaced the ACL.
Man, do you want to give a plug to your gym or your socials where people can find you at? And where's the gym?
The gym is in Rose Bay, right? It's just on Old South Held Road. Super easy to get to. Heaps of parking. It is called Alliance Sydney, right? So alliancesydney.com.au. Instagram is Alliance Sydney BJJ, which is also my Instagram. I have a personal Instagram that I don't use. Everything's through the gym Instagram. You can see photos from the Pineapple Cup. Ooh. You can see my bulletproof socks. You know, you can see, you know.
Do you have bulletproof socks?
No.
It's just that I just wear super colourful socks when I come to bulletproof. And now they're just officially bulletproof socks. But if I don't have colourful socks on at bulletproof, it's like weird.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, Alliance Sydney or Alliance Sydney BJJ. Man, come check us out. Even if you train at another gym, if you just want to come down and do a class, there's none of that. You're from that team. No politics, no BS. Come down for a roll, do a class. The more the merrier.
Sick.
Wicked.
Guys, thanks for listening today. If you enjoyed that episode, please take a screenshot of it on your phone, share it, tag us up at Jungle Brothers Movement, and share it with a mate, someone who might like to listen to it. There's some really good stuff in there, and that'll help people's jiu-jitsu journeys, but also will help us to grow the podcast. If you didn't know, we're now on Spotify, which is sick. So you can catch us on iTunes or any of the Google Pocket Casts or Spotify. Right there next to Joe Rogan. Just ask him about it. He'll tell you all about our episodes. Thanks for listening, Joe. Thanks, Panavore, for the coffee. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Yeah, and just before we go, just a quick shout out. Congratulations on the nuptials to Dan and Jake. Looking forward to the wedding.
Yes, boys. Very proud. And I'm in full support of it.
All right, guys. Thank you.
See you guys.